Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra.
It is the Bison Media Zone on a Wednesday. Typically, we have experts come in and talk, whether it's McFeely or Kolpak. Sam's in here. I'm like, well, there might not be a bigger expert on the actual football team than the head football coach. So Tim Polasek is here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be stepping in for Jeff and those guys. Hopefully I can do as good a job.
I think you could probably lay out what's going on. Let's first chat here because you got a couple of your former players are doing some stuff. I visited with Gray Zabel yesterday. Going to be playing in the Super Bowl here in a week's time. How about that?
Yeah, it's cool. You know, my mind's immediately going to a phone call I had sitting at a train tracks for about 20 minutes coming out of Enderline, I think, North Dakota, and talked to Gray, and, you know, he voiced some frustration with some of the decisions the guys made. And I was like, Gray, I'm just calling to congratulate you on going to the Super Bowl and playing so well.
Yeah.
Like, don't take this stuff lightly now and find a way to enjoy it. Take care of the tickets. And I had a flashback to Tristan Wirfs, you know, wins the Super Bowl in his rookie year and they haven't been back.
Yeah.
You know, and how difficult it is. And so hopefully they can capitalize. Man, he's been playing good football. He's in a good place health-wise. Obviously, he did make the comment, man, it does. This is a long season.
Well, I asked him that yesterday. He's been going nonstop since July of 2024. Prior to his senior year, it's been nonstop football for basically 18 months right now.
Yeah, for any rookie that's played at his level or any rookie that has been deemed a starter, you know, he had to earn that, I'm sure. But he's been probably full tilt. At least the veterans, I'm sure, had 10 days here or there, 5 days here or there. And so I remember us talking about that with a couple other players that I've been around in my past. So
this time last year, you were in Mobile to see him going at the Senior Bowl. I mean, even then, did you get the sense that he was, trending as a first-round pick at that point?
Well, I think what you just did is exactly right. Like, no matter where he was, you know, coming off the season or the projections in the middle of the season, I think Gray just continuously did this.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes talk about, and it kind of ties into some of our other topics, you know, the portal. Like, the reason Gray Zabel is in the position that he's in is because of unbelievable family, number one, but superior confidence in his fundamentals and his technique. And then I think the baseline conceptually that we were able to lay down here at North Dakota State, I think he's hit the ground running, but it's all because of that confidence level. You know, he never wavered. He stayed, and he laid down a foundation that allows him to go into big moments and say, hey, I've been here before, and I am trained. And so I think Gray just did such an excellent job. You know, it's hopefully what Cole is doing now and Bryce, but Gray did such an excellent job in the interview process. That's what I keep hearing from some guys that I've reached out to. I'm not sure that he wasn't one of the top 2 or 3 interviews of most clubs of all the draftable guys.
I know. We were talking about that at the Combine. Like, he killed it there. Once they got him in the room, that's where he wowed them with what he was and got up on the whiteboard. That's where he really killed it there.
Yeah, and personality.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
his ability. Connor Riley won't mind me sharing this, but Connor shared a story that, hey, you know, before we get started, this is Gray talking. Before we get started, both my head coach back at NDSU and you know, were guys that turned me down, both at K-State and Iowa State. And I get a chuckle on that. But if you do understand the big picture, it kind of makes sense.
Yes.
How Gray was, you know, a multi-sport athlete and so forth and so on. But I think it was his personality then showing up with, you know, Bison gear on and saying that community matters to me. I'm going to embrace myself into a community. Team matters to me. And here's an example of how that works. And so for him, you know, different than every kid. Every kid goes through this process alone. But Gray turned down some major stuff, and look what happened.
I want to ask, this might sound crazy to ask, so I ask you, can you roll with this with having 2 former Bison starting in the Super Bowl? Is that something you can go on the road or call somebody and say, hey, you know, our logo is going to be, you're going to hear in the NBC intros in the Super Bowl, North Dakota State be mentioned twice over.
Oh, we do the best job we can. You know, social media takes you so far.
Yeah.
But, you know, last weekend we had 88 Junior Day visitors. And so unusually, it was like they brought 2 or 3 people with them.
Okay.
You know, a sister or a brother or parents. The room had to have closer to 250 in it. You know, that was just my general sense. So it was 201 and 202, which the Fargo Dome, that's a good facility for us up there. And, no, we talk about the NFL at some point, but not before we talk about the how and the development piece. But it's interesting. You're talking about 4 or 5 guys that have won Practice Player of the Week now at the Senior Bowl. And you're talking about some 50 draft picks in our program's history, and the recent success is almost unmatched at our level. I think we're at 18 active guys that are on roster still right now, and that puts you in a pretty good company if you look at like the Mountain West or the MAC, the Big 12, the Pac-10 even. I mean, it puts you in a really good company, and so we've done a good job with that.
I know you were on the road yesterday. We got a little bit of video of what Cole did. I don't know if you got a chance to see any snippets on social media yesterday, but for the people that had not seen him play, the overwhelming consensus was this guy had a pretty good first day at the Senior Bowl yesterday.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw him handle a fake audible, and then they ran kind of a throwback play, and he just looked so comfortable doing it. I mean, right and left, can, and that's like usually a run to a run or pass to a run. And it's interesting. I'm curious to get in touch with him on Wednesday or on Thursday or so after he's through the big workload. And how'd you feel about the conceptual stuff? How'd you feel about the footwork and rhythm? Because that was really interesting. Even talking to Cam last year about some nuance and some things that he handled pretty good. I'm really saddened for his family and myself and our program that I can't be down there, but we're way too busy.
You got a lot going on here to lock in. To me, this is one thing. I think when he and Bryce Lance both go to the combine, that is where both of them you've been there numerous times. That can really shine there for what their athleticism is.
I think the athleticism, the want to compete and to do everything, can set you aside, and then obviously how you perform. I mean, you still, I'm not going to mention any names because that position's hard to play quarterback, but there's been quarterbacks that have started recently in the National Football League, really high draft picks that airmail balls. I mean, I still remember Carson. I think Carson was like 23 of 25 on the day.
Yes.
And those are difficult throws, and these are to people that you don't have
any relationship with,
rhythm or timing or understanding. So, like, underthrowing guys is a big deal, or throwing wide and missing them or behind. And so, his accuracy and his footwork and rhythm would be important. And then for Bryce to get out there and really show his ability to jump, leap, and run at a certain weight will be critical.
All right, so you mentioned you're really busy. I think for people that don't follow, they follow what's going on with games, maybe they understand signing day. Why are you so busy right now?
Well, the first thing is, obviously we were disappointed in the end of the season.
Yeah.
And so actually that was harder than getting ready for opponents and doing the normal work. And we need to be playing to be able to fight back a little bit against the agent world right now that are just it's a little bit out of hand how much our players are getting hit on by agents and wanting their services because they got deals with GMs and so forth. But so you take that, and we're trying to, all of us, but myself in particular, trying to manage something that I don't have any training on. I don't have any experience on. So, multiple phone calls with agents, with potential portal guys as we're projecting out. The hardest part, I think when I'm looking back on it, Dom, I'm not sure the busyness, but like the anxiety of not knowing who was going to go in was way worse than finding out who was in and how do we attack the challenges. But then high school recruiting, coupled with a much more intense, short period of time for portal recruiting. And we're just not going to waver. We had to get back out into high schools. And so I think just condensing all that stuff into small gaps really puts a lot of mental strain on your body.
Let me ask you this, because I've said it, you lived it. You guys kept winning, would you have been able to hold on to a couple more guys in your opinion?
Maybe one or two.
Okay.
But after talking to those guys, I think for most of them, things were set ahead of time. With whether you want to call it tampering or not, things were set ahead of time.
Sounds like tampering to me.
Yeah. And I just don't know how the NCAA or the government's going to define this, so we can't cry about spilled milk. We're going to have to really do a good job continuing to be relational versus transactional. We're going to continue to build the team from the bottom up. Next year, we'll be at 87% still high school recruited Bison, which is a good number. And that way, we can talk about, I have a list here of guys that are highlighted that are new. But what about Alex Elliott? And he was a transfer a year ago, but we didn't get to see him.
No.
What about Drew Klein? We felt pretty strong about him. And so those are some guys that are going to get opportunities that are in the program already. Peter Hugo. And so it's not always about the portal. It's about what do you got in the program that we're unaware of.
I'm trying to phrase this. When a guy comes and do you get a phone call? Is it hey, coach, can we talk? Is that when a guy decides, how does it normally go down?
Two of them happened right over Christmas Eve, and that was sad because I was trying to do everything I could to really be present with my wife
Not
and
do football stuff. Yeah.
my nephew and niece and family, and that's hard. And then you got to step away and you take that call, and then like, what are the next 2 hours like? And you're losing a relationship. Number one, you're losing a piece to the team that you might build something around, and then you have to change directions. But all of our guys, I do want to say thank you to all the guys that left one more time, and we'll move on. They were all very communicative. Nobody posted early without us knowing. We always were in direct communication. And, right along with that, though, Will Johnson takes a job, and his agent leaks that he's leaving before we can talk to our kids. So this is a two-way street, and it's kind of all messy right now. But it's a challenge not knowing who's going to go in. You kind of have an idea, and then you get there was one or two surprises. And there were a couple guys that went back on what they said because of things popping up late.
Yeah.
And that's just unfortunate.
Yeah. With the window where it was, because this is the first time you've gone through that, was that okay? Would you move it back to the spring now that you've gone through it? Give me your analysis on that.
I can't put my finger on it because it's just not tied to the academic calendar. We've got a kid that's enrolled in online courses that's going to be pulling in here, or pulled in here shortly this week, and that stuff is all really fast. And the fact that recruiting portal or high school doesn't match up with the academic calendar, that's a concern. I do like that we got a portal window set when we got it set so everybody could start to operate. But our calendar, again, we'll say it again and again, but COVID, and then we're going to throw the portal and NIL all in there at once. And I just don't think – I think we're off balance still. And so when we do get some guidelines in place and we can operate to a calendar that we know is there from year to year, I think we can – I think we're men, right? We got to do tough things every day. And once we know the challenge, it's just the target's moving hard.
I talked to you, the Saban idea, and I mentioned it on the show, of you play the year, then you have the portal open after the academic year in April, right? Then you have spring practices or OTAs or whatever in June, and then take a little time off because you need something, and then start in August. Would that fly?
Well, the positive to that for sure would be able to investigate and to get to know portal recruits. You wouldn't have to go in a 3 to 5 day span.
Speed date, right?
Speed dating, and you hope you don't miss on culture, number one.
Right.
So that makes total sense. It makes total sense for I think colleges could get behind that. Okay, we need admissions to be available here, but we've got some time. It's going to work out. The only negative to that is at the high levels, paying these NIL packages that are out there, you'd be technically or potentially paying guys for 6 months that aren't going to be there.
Yeah.
Okay, the second thing is what? Okay, I know I'm going in the portal, and it's February. How motivated am I to work out? So what kind of athlete are you? Are you getting a trained guy or are you not? Because you're talking about hitting the practice field in June. Well, those guys, a big part of what we do in college athletics, may be different in the NFL, is we want to keep those injury lists short.
Yep.
And you have to be able to train. So there's positives on both sides. I think getting this calendar more in sequence when games are over, when the championships are being played, is so critical.
But having the title game next year, Tim, is going to be January 25th. That's 3 weeks after the FCS title game. That's way too late.
I'm not. Again, sometimes we say like NCAA. Well, who are we talking about? I know as coaches, we have to stay proactive, voicing our concerns. We have to stay proactive in protecting the student athlete. Well-being, ability to get to a new school, and that ain't going to match up. And it doesn't match up not only for the championship teams, but probably for the semifinal teams.
You're right.
So that's really dicey on a lot of levels. And so, do you get teams with lesser talent playing in those big games?
I had an email to ask you about the 9-game redshirt rule. Is that going to fly, and would that happen for what you know in FCS football for this fall?
Well, we propose a definite increase. Let's talk in terms of 6.
Okay.
That night down at the convention, and I went this year because I wanted to be able to voice some concern from the Missouri Valley Football Conference standpoint. And that night, I run into a guy I know really well who was in the FBS meetings, and they just said, no, we're going to propose 8 to 9. And then see if they'll vote on that. Everyone's trying to get closer
to 5 for 5.
5 for 5, so you can eliminate some waivers. But there is a lot of hearings right now that are going on that kind of hold that or keep that at bay. But I think I did get a really good sense from the NCAA that they would like this waiver process to be minimized as much as possible.
So no more. That would mean no more medical red shirts, no more red shirts of any kind, right? You get 5 years, and that's your clock.
You get 5 years to play,
Yeah.
which obviously for the FCS level that would be huge because then we would have no more concerns about staying tight. Like any opportunity you get to play a guy on special teams, play him. That way his redshirt freshman year he's closer to being a sophomore. I think as time goes on for the group of 5 for mid-major football, I don't see a whole lot of change in the product on the field potentially. I really don't. But you're going to see newer and younger teams and the teams that are coached the best, that lay out the best plan, and teams that can get focused 10 months at a time and really do a good job eliminating distractions are going to be the winners.
All right, let's break. We come back. Let's chat some actual on-the-field 2026 Bison. We're going to do that. Tim Polasek joining us here in studio on the Bison Media Zone. We'll do that when we come back right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Bison Media Zone rolls on. Head football coach Tim Polasek joining us here in studio. We're going to chat actually on the field stuff now, which is great. I think we fixed college football, right? And certainly
We've got some good ideas.
There was a couple comments I had. Matt Larson was here last week, and I wanted to read this to you because I know there might be a consensus of fans, maybe a small group, that feel like after you got your contract extension, nothing good has happened with Bison football. You lost to Illinois State. The guys went in the portal. Will Johnson left to take another job. That Montana State wins it. How would you answer back on that? Obviously, there's been some additions as well.
That's probably the toughest question you've ever asked me, and I don't know that I given any thought to it. I most certainly haven't come off the gas. We're going to lose a young coach or two. I would say probably on average, we'd have to go back and look, but on average, I bet we lose a coach a year. Mm-hmm. And Will Johnson, leaving, I don't think has any reflection on our relationship. In fact, I think it's grown in the last 2 or 3 weeks based on some things he's going through. I do think, personally, talking about the Illinois State game, I thought we did a good job. Jill and I did a good job of getting rid of the distractions when we did. If you look at that timeline, and I'm not sure if everybody would agree with that or not. I don't know that for the first time that we handled the distractions of the portal and where this agent thing is at now. There's some kids even regionally that have high school agents. And so learning how to grow through that and not trying to deflect too much. The extension typically, or typically comes after wanting to secure a coach because of big things. We still were very successful this year. I'm clear on the standard of being in the national title, but we were a 12-1 team, and we just happened to play our worst half of football. I don't know, in maybe 20 years offensively, and so I guess I really don't know how to answer that. It most certainly doesn't. I'm not at the golf course anymore, or not focused on doing the job. I think we did a nice job with the preparation and so forth. But I think some of the distractions as far as the agents and some things going on for our kids got to be maybe a challenge.
So you added 9 guys through the portal. You actually added a guy yesterday. Keith Williams made an official Cornell transfer at linebacker. Was there a point like we lost a position here, we got to add a guy? Is that how it works, or what was the strategy for the 9 guys that you end up adding here?
Well, kind of to replace what you lose. Okay. Because we want to be a team that builds from the bottom up. If you're tracking our high school recruiting, we feel like that's going pretty well, and that was proven last year with the amount of freshmen that played.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's a little bit of a wait and see, but you are projecting out. Like that whole time, December 20th through the 30th, a lot of communication with the staff, a lot of meetings with the staff. Okay, who are we staying in touch with? Who are we concerned about? And then, I guess to go back to the last question, our guys didn't just leave for, school X for $100,000 or something. 3 or 4 of those guys are in the 2 were close to the 7 figures. Man. Okay, and so we got to be mindful that our best players might get some
realistic on that. Yes,
some realistic. Yeah. Yep. Now, if you look at the offensive line, we didn't go 2 for 2. We went 1 for 2, but we've been over signing in the O line with younger people. We just got to get them to mature faster. 2 corners leave. Okay, bring 2 corners in, and we flirted with the idea of 3, but we really like this freshman group that's coming in, and we like some kids that are in the program. As far as the tight end addition, I thought that was really smart because of the type of kid Gage is. It was a culture fit. He was ecstatic about his opportunity and how that all came together. And then I thought maybe, Carson Williams leaving the program, we got Zen coming back, but just fortifying a bigger body that can be physical. So that was kind of one of those things that we just said, okay, we've got the ability to do it. Let's do it. The snapper, obviously, you go 1 for 1, and we like the high school kid we got coming in.
Yep.
So that we feel like we patched that up. A punter became available.
Yeah.
Now that's special. That was unique. He was a protected student athlete, a DSA. And so basically, he's a freebie to the roster.
So that does not count against your 105.
Does not count against our 105.
Okay.
And then that gives us some real security for not next year. We got competition now.
Absolutely. But for 2027, you got something there.
Now we got something, and we can keep building. So that was kind of that one just fell in our lap a little bit. I think
he can punt with both legs too. Is that accurate?
I think he's working on it. I haven't been around
Caleb McGrath we're talking about.
I haven't been around the kids yet, but the two DNs kind of 1 for 1 with Toby. But then Chance Simon made the right decision for him. He he just didn't see the light, wasn't going to play here, and so we felt like adding one there. And those are bigger bodies that maybe could even give us something on pass rush inside. And so I thought we attacked some needs, and then some late additions with the high school kids were just in the spots that we felt like in the future, we want to guard against any kind of portal damage.
The consensus sometimes I get on this show is, wow, why isn't NDSU adding guys that, from the Big 12 or the Big 10, and they're adding guys from the NSIC or the MIAA or NAIA? Can you address that?
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of people that are executing that game plan. There's specifically P4 teams that start with FCS. That's the problem. Our kids are being evaluated from October on, and they're not being evaluated by other FCS teams.
No.
They're not being evaluated by other group of 5 teams. They're being evaluated by the highest of high,
the
P4s.
Big 10, the SEC, yeah.
Okay, so I think what ends up happening is here's what I would challenge our fan base on and to trust us. We're looking for production over potential. Okay, I'm looking for smooth, clean process in kids that have a clear understanding of our culture and they want to fit and have an appreciation for North Dakota State and Fargo and the things that we do have. All the kids that we added have that. Okay, when you start looking at a P4 kid, you're bringing in negotiation, which we're not in position to do. We're slotting these guys into a salary cap. You're bringing in negotiation. You're bringing in oftentimes a disgruntled guy that hasn't played very much, because otherwise why would they be?
Why would he leave?
Why would they be dropping down? And so the combination of that stuff, not that we're not open to it, but that list isn't very as sexy as some people think. If you're going to just look at stars and where somebody went before, and we've had some examples of that, I challenge you to look at it really closely and look who played and look who didn't play. And so there's just there's no exact deal there, but we got to keep culture and we got to keep fit and production at the forefront. And now I will say this, Indiana.
Yeah.
Production.
Yeah.
Culture. Fit. And all of a sudden they're winning a national title. So that's more of the trend that's being talked about out there more than it is just to get the highest drop down guy.
I want to ask about the most recent addition here in Keith Williams. That's a guy who's played. He's played for 2 years. He started in the Ivy League. We found out, and I think you know this, Anthony Shadime Alfaro was a pretty good player. Jack Giuliano was a good player out of the Ivy League. The Ivy League can play ball. I mean, this guy is going to come in and give you some depth there at that spot at middle linebacker. Yeah, and actually, he's from a high school where I started my coaching career, and I have a great respect for those guys. And overall, overarching report was pretty good. Went back to my notes when I was at Wyoming, and I looked at him. I watched him work out. You mentioned that, yeah.
At that time, he was a little bit of a tweener. And, I'm an offensive coach out in Wisconsin recruiting for Wyoming. So that all of a sudden, you start putting the pieces together. He was the one guy. Otherwise, we were going to wait till the end of May, kind of look at junior college. Because there are some excellent junior college kids now, too, that are getting left behind. We were going to kind of just pump the brakes and really work with our guys. But the more kids I talk to on our team, Coach, if you get a chance to add a good culture piece and a chance for competition, let's go. But on the same regard, some of those freshman kids were like, hey, we see this as opportunity. Let's rock and roll. Right. So we're in good shape. So that's the 9 guys added there. Let's break. We come back. We'll chat on the what's ahead for the calendar here for the next little bit. As Tim Polasek joins us here in studio, Bison Media Zone rolls on WDAY Extra right after this.
All right, back here. Bison Media Zone rolls on. Special edition on this Wednesday is NDSU head football coach Tim Polasek joining us in studio. Normally, in the old days, next Wednesday would be the day, the first Wednesday in February. Suddenly, that's part of the other thing we're talking about at the top. Would you move signing day? Would you get it out of where it's at now, or you like it where it's at?
I like the December. I like having a early option. That's for sure. I mean, this would be really messy.
How about before the season? Could you do that in the summer?
I do think there's some talk about giving the kids an opportunity, to secure their.
Yeah.
And I think most kids for us probably would do it because of the
absolutely
the risk of
yes.
the risk of injury and those kind of things.
Yep.
I think that's always worthy conversation. The further we, as college football, not NDSU, the further we trend away from high school recruiting. We're still doing everything we can to be 80-20, 90-10 on our roster, percentage-wise. I think there's a lot of people that have just, okay, we're going to be 50-50.
Yeah.
Where's the development piece? Who does that really well?
All right, I want to ask you on Jim Kramer retiring. Describe the conversation there and how long has this been in the works?
Well, it's since the day I got here, Napoli was being brought back. Not only one because we needed to create a position there. I mean, the size of the team, we've always needed that. But number two, it was to position it. Whether Jim had one more year left or he did one more year, 2 more years. It was kind of to position it with, Matt Entz's relationship with Knapp and then myself. It was to position it really well for the future. So over the last year, I would say Jim did more in some areas, and then Jim passed off some things to Ryan, and that whole mentorship, some guidance. But Ryan was so eager to get up and running, and it just kind of came together because Jim controlled his timeline, not us. But we're happy. I'm excited for Doreen and Jim to, Jim is at retirement age. I mean, and that's hard. That's a hard job. They're on the floor a lot, and they train year round.
Well, for people that don't know, he sees the team more than you do. He sees the guys all year round, where you're limited in your exposure with the team. They're with them all year, all 12 months of the year.
Well, even in hotels with meals, nutrition, weigh-ins, check-ins, mental health stuff, nutrition. I mean, the strength coach, I'm not sure if it is head ball coach at the top, now, this kind of goes back to your other question about the contract and stuff. Well, I'm also the GM right now, and there's no way around that. Okay, so if it's head coach, GM, strength conditioning coach is up there.
Yep.
But there's no better developer of boys to men, men to tough men, husbands to fathers. I mean, and the outpouring that Jim has gotten, it's just been really humbling for him.
You have an early story when you got here, meeting him, and what interaction like that was with Coach Kramer?
From the start, similar, intensity, especially when I was younger, and enthusiasm for what we were doing. That really caught my eye. But his attention to detail, his attention to the culture, and to continue to move things forward really stood out to me. Yeah, you know what? Yes. When I was a young GA here and we were up in the old BSA, it was really common for me to go get a workout at 9:30 at night, partly because I was staying at the Dome as long as possible because I had not $1. And Jim would be up there just closing the doors or just getting it ready for the next day. And that's probably what stood out the most is, he literally, 5 a.m. to most nights, 9:30 at night, 340 days a year.
Jeez. I remember talking with you when you hired Ryan Napoli back. There was an intent on that, and obviously we know now here 2 years later. Give us a little bit on how Ryan has been grooming himself to take over for this position.
Well, it's a good question. Obviously, everything, his foundation, like mine, was built here at North Dakota State under guys like Craig Bull and Jim Kramer. So that's number one. So as I stayed in touch with him, I always knew he wasn't going to lose that foundation. But then he got put into some different cultures and some stickier situations, learning how to manage some different different cultures, at SEMO and at Northern Illinois, and his growth and his understanding. It's always interesting to me if you get a young coach, 25, 26 years old, and you ask him, well, talk to me about discipline, or what is your philosophy? What are they really basing that off of yet? They haven't really developed it. So Knapp went away and he developed some real hard line things in his approach. And it's so clear to see that his professional growth is unmatched, but that enthusiasm to get in there and to dig in, just like Jim, with the players, is something that our guys gravitate towards.
Is he as loud as Kramer?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And he loses his voice as fast as he did. He's done a good job already of structuring like the internships and the GA. Okay. Owen Johnson's in there with us right now. Right. He's really paying off, and then we'll make a hire here shortly.
So that's the other big news that's happened around the football team on top of everything we talked about earlier. That's, I think, for a lot of people, Kramer is just associated with Bison football because he's been there for the entire duration of all the 10 championships.
Well, I think about being in this head coaching role going on year 3 now. Those are the things that you don't overlook them, but like you just don't give that a lot of immediate thought. But Randy Hedberg steps away. Jim Kramer steps away. It allows for opportunity for others, but those are big changes. I mean, Randy's still up there, and I'm so appreciative of that, when he stops at practice or he gets his eyes on some things. And I encourage Jim to do that. We encouraged him to look at some avenues to stay involved, but I really think he's ready to step away, and maybe he trains some young kids in the community or something like that. But, those are challenges, and you got to be, you got to operate with a scalpel.
All right, so 2026 is here. When's do you have an official start date for spring football yet?
Well, we have our competition day. I think that's the 6th of March, which basically starts spring break.
Okay.
That's fun, right? We have some competitions even as far as them getting into some uniforms and things they want to do. But that's highly competitive, and that'll lead us into our leadership council competitions, and there's 12 teams right now. And then we go on spring break, and then that next week there's 3 days of pretty intense training, running, making sure our hamstrings are in good shape. And then we have 2 OTA days, which are really opportunities to meet skills and drills only. And then the 24th, I think that's the first Tuesday. Yeah. And then we're Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for basically 5 weeks as of right now. Unless we get word that we can do some workouts in June, then we may adjust that slightly.
And that may be decided sometime this spring, right?
It needs to come sooner than later. I mean, but think about this. We want to do a 8-week training session.
Yes.
Okay, if all of a sudden you were to cut back spring ball a little bit to do 6 workouts in June, Ryan Napoli needs to have a 2-week training session, and that is very methodical in how we build these guys.
I know you've gone through like the cut-ups of tapes and stuff. Who, for the guys that are coming back for 26, who maybe popped to say, okay, maybe I didn't see that as much, and we're going to, on the field, we're going to see that a lot more in 2026.
Well, Elijah Wayne and Vanderpool, I mean, really stand out. Now, not that Logan Larson can't get better yet, but he's, going into the deeper end of his career. Stenbrotten.
Really good,
I just think, like, there's some real stuff there. I'm really pleased with Peter Hugo's growth. Taylor Needy.
He was really good at the end of last
Darius
year.
Gibbons, right? Yeah. And Crumby. Like, it's still going to be one of our best competitive situations where we know we can play 3 guys in 2 spots. I think at running back, DJ Scott, after looking at the tape, I'm not sure that he didn't have himself a really productive season from a fundamental standpoint, from doing the right things, being in the right spots. So I'm excited about that. Reese Kessel, Jackson Williams, Nathan, Hayes. I'm excited about it again. I know it's a 1-year starter. There are some things that are potentially, that concern you, but we got to do a good job of cultivating competition, intense moments for him, so we don't get in a situation like the last game of the year this year. But to have a guy that's been in the program 5 years, an unbelievable leader, those are some guys to mention. And I think I know I'm missing some guys.
Off of that, of Hayes, what did you learn from Cole being a 1-year starter? Can you utilize that for this year with Hayes?
I just think that as an offensive staff, if a guy's not perfect or he's not quite, in rhythm and there's some signs, we got to be able to redirect faster and help him to get started.
Because Cam Miller, you didn't have to worry about that in 2024.
And I always think, and thank you for bringing it up, but I think about that throw to Raja. Montana State State brings 6 guys, and he just throws hot like he's on air on a net. And so, providing those opportunities for those 1-year starters to really be in intense moments. But Nathan has to put himself in those moments from this point forward. When he's watching tape, he needs to get reps. In the spring ball, value every rep and winning the situation, and I think we're going to do a really nice job with that.
So too early for me to ask you about offensive line?
Well, we've got a couple options there, though. I think depending on Kenny, I'm not sure he holds the cards just a little bit as far as how fast he can get acclimated, how fast
Is he a tackle or a guard?
Well, he's a tackle to start.
Okay.
And So is Josh. But Josh has showed some really good signs and flashes too inside. Those guys know we have some variables. I mean, Griffin Empey is a really good player going into his junior year. I don't know if his NFL career projects better at center or guard right now, but my inclination is that could be center. And Gage Schmidt, so how does he come along? You know, we're right back to talking about Lewinsky and, Nate Testad and Schneckelhoff. But I think Testad really had a remarkable year for a redshirt freshman. He didn't play his best game the last game of the year, but I just don't see that kid not learning and growing from every moment. And then Ryan Babbitt's played really well. You know, he gave up a couple late sacks, were coverage sacks. And so there's some guys to work with there. We got 2 big freshmen on campus already. Not that they'll play in week 1, but you never know. Maybe they're ready in week 5 or 6. And then I like Stummis's growth. And you got that whole group of redshirt freshmen that are, and Coy Okeson has really been productive. So, hey, the good news is we didn't have to go out and get 5 portal linemen, because that would be a little bit scary to me. If that happens, that's going to have me on edge.
Last thing before we break, you have guys here that are freshmen that decided to enroll early. You did this. Donovan Woolen was like the poster child your first year here. Then Miles Mitchell, Xander Smith did it. Now you've got 4? How many guys that enrolled? Because Thienemann's here.
We got 4.
Earl Brown's here.
Yeah.
Ward's here. And whom I'm forgetting is the other. There's another freshman I thought they got here early. I can't remember now. If there's another one.
Brown, Caden, Caden the tight end.
Caden Ward out of Omaha.
Tolliver, the running back.
Oh, Braylon Tolliver. That's the 4th one, yeah.
We've gotten really good reports. I cannot believe how much Caden has changed his body in 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, he's up to 234 already at tight end, and he really walks around with a good demeanor. And those 2 big old linemen, they work the right way. We got to get their weight where they can go through the running and the double reps and things like that.
Tucker Thienemann looks like he's 30 years old, by the way.
Yeah, and Earl Brown is, in
right
the
there with him, right?
320 range. Jeez. So we want to get him probably down in the 313 range, 310. But really good reports on Tolliver's ability to trigger, and his suddenness and speed has been impressive so far.
That a guy that can play for you think?
Well, running back is always a real possibility. I like the competition right now, and if you want to throw Tolliver into it, but Ross and Miles Mitchell right there, kind of log jammed, right along with DJ Scott. And then, Barika's brother, has been really solid. And, I think there's still a role for Cortez. And so we're starting to like that group. Sam's been working hard with them already.
Great stuff. This was awesome. Thanks so much for coming by today and giving us a little Bison football fix, because, it's never far off the radar. And it's been, I'd say, is hectic the right word? How would you describe since the season ended, the last 7 weeks? How would you describe
it as a learning experience. I mean, honestly, and there's a lot of team makers and fans that are listening that I've engaged at basketball games and stuff, and I'm sure they would say they could tell Coach P was a little bit on edge. Just different. And we may be at the start of a little bit of a new era where, how long do you get these guys? Is it 3-4 years? We want everybody to finish all 5 seasons, but I'll remind everybody, our guys are graduating. Nathaniel Stanley was graduated. Toby Nene was really close to graduation. And so that kind of throws a curveball in there too. Got to be quick and nimble, and we got to continue to embrace the good in the game, though. And some of this stuff isn't very fun to talk about, but we're going to meet every challenge head on. We're going to be improvement driven, and we'll get better and better every week.
I have one last one. Sorry, I mentioned up the top of the show. This 27 local recruiting class is about as good as you remember for this talent. Well, I'm talking Minnesota and North Dakota, the level of players that are out there right now.
Well, the bodies and the movement is where I would start, is on par with, for Division I. And then you start to add up some of the production for some of the guys. It does equal a guy that might get an opportunity, whether it's P4 or above us, I guess, but we're not going to put our hands down. We're going to fight for each and every one of these guys. The football in the state's getting better, and I want to plug our 7th and 8th grade camp. We're going to move to where it's padded with youth camp. We're inviting all the junior high coaches to come out and learn something. We're going to give a clinic opportunity after every one of those workouts, and we want to continue to give back. And I do think that in this region, football is getting better because we run a football camp. It's a get better opportunity. It's not an evaluation process, and I think the high school coaches are doing a great job, and there's some big, long bodies that move around pretty good.
Some big guys around here. Thanks so much for coming by, bud. Good to see you.
Thank you, guys.
do this again.
Appreciate it.
All
Go
right.
Bison.
Tim Polasek joining us, NDSU head football coach here in studio. We'll break, come back, get you ready for a couple of big basketball games coming up, and sign off this week on the Bison Media Zone right after this. All right. How good was that? That was just been it's a solid hour with the head football coach there, chatting everything under the sun for this week's Bison Media Zone. We got some Bison, pro Bison info. The Packers are hiring Bobby Babich as their defensive pass game coordinator and secondary coach, according to the NFL Network. The former Fargo South Bruin and Bison corner was the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator the last couple years. He had been with the Bills since, 2017, I want to say, ? So there's some, once you're in the game, that's why we asked Tyler Roll when he was on last week about it. And obviously Tyler emphasized he wanted to call plays, and that didn't look like it was going to happen immediately with the Lions. But once you're in the NFL, man, you're in the club. And so Bobby's heading to the Packers to be their defensive backs coach. Email comes in. Dom, thanks so much for having Coach Polasek on. Such great insight in day-to-day of Bison football and what the offseason is about. Sounds like Bison football is in good position. I wanted to ask that one question since it was brought up, and we talked about it on how the offseason, frankly, has gone, I guess, perception-wise, since the loss to Illinois State, the loss of the 8 players. Will Johnson gets a new job. Jim Kramer retires. I think I don't know if it's avalanche of bad news, but it's certainly stuff that Bison football hasn't really had to deal with. And it's been a different offseason. And now looking ahead, fully here we are. 2026 is here. We're less than 2 months out from spring football beginning, and a new look team with some guys that we know a bit, some we don't know anything about. That's going to be really interesting. I think nationally wise, people wondering, where is NDSU going to fit itself into? That's what we're going to have to discuss over the next 6-7 months before we get ready for a new football season. Great stuff there with the head football coach. If you missed any of that, we'll podcast it later. You can find it on our BMZ feed, and of course you can watch it later on WDAY+. We do it each and every Wednesday. Back with you next Wednesday at 10:30 as we turn the corner to February. Get ready for the march to Sioux Falls in the Summit League basketball tournament. Thanks so much for watching this week's edition of the Bison Media Zone, everybody. We'll see you back here next Wednesday at 10:30 on WDAY Extra.